So we're going to start with a bit of a history lesson on Taylor Swift, or actually better known Taylor Allison Swift. Taylor Allison Swift was born on the 30th of December 1989, and she had a record deal when she was still pretty much a baby. So at 15, in 2004, she signed her first record deal. She then went on to become one of the Grammys' most decorated winners. She has so many Grammys that she actually can't even hold them all. She was the youngest winner of Album of the Year at the age of 21 for her album Fearless, and today she has released 10 studio albums, including 2 that she's re-recorded, which we'll get to a little bit later on. It's also quite commonly regarded that she actually is the music industry. In November, she actually took the entire top 10 of the Billboard 100 when she just released her most recent album, Midnights. If this doesn't appeal to the academics in the room, she is also an academic herself. She has an honorary doctorate, and her accolades have been used in many courses as well across the state. So you can actually take a course in copyright and music ownership at New York University, and you can even take a course in Taylor Swift's literacy works at Queen's University at Kingston. A lot of students have also used a lot of her data in order to get some big analysis of her career so far. That includes this nice published study that was put online that used R to have a look through all of her Spotify data to see if they could look at any trends in her music. The 2 things that we wanted to take out of this to move forward through the rest of the presentation mostly is the sheer number of songs that she has written and that we're going to use for some of the lyrical analysis we go through so far. Of these albums that were used in this study set, you can see that actually more than a third of them had 20 or more songs on them. And Spotify also uses this metric called valence, which is a score from 0 to 1 that's supposed to kind of look at the negative or positive vibe of the song. And if you plot the valence for each of Taylor Swift's albums, you can see how the mood shifts or how her personal life influences her songwriting. And some of the kind of dramas and things we'll go through today are quite well represented when you look back at this graph at how the valence score shifts. So people have really liked, or the media especially, have really liked to paint her in this kind of misogynistic view of being a girl who sings about her ex-boyfriends. But we hope that by going in through some of her more interesting notes, we can show how she pulls on things such as taking down record label executives, her own personal growth and sharing that with her fans, and actually even using her lyrics in some cases to cause divorce. So, stay tuned.
So, to fully understand the incredible lyricism of Taylor Swift, you need to know some of the drama that's gone on over the last few years. So this is Carly Kloss, some of you may know her. Her and Taylor were best friends between like 2012 and 2016. So much so that they were just photographed together all the time, were just really, really close. There was the whole Kissgate scandal where we didn't know whether they were more than friends. It was all, it kept Jennifer Lawrence up at night. No one knew what was going on. But then in 2016 it started to all go a bit downhill. Carly Kloss started sort of associating herself with people that Taylor had already got some feuds with. And so like say the Kanye and Kim drama that I'll mention in a minute, she was kind of involved with that a little bit as well. Like she didn't stand up for Taylor when everyone was coming for her. And she was also seen making references to Katy Perry and was also seen with Scooter Braun, who I'll also go on about in a minute. I'm sure some of you might have heard of the Kanye West scandal back in 2009, when basically Taylor had just won the Best Music Video of the Year award at the VMAs, and he jumped on stage saying that Beyonce's music video was the best of all time. Basically, she shouldn't have got the award. So that kind of just led to some beef with him for a while, but then around like 2015 it seemed to like get a bit better. He started like giving her flowers, pretty manipulative in the long run, but it seemed to be going quite well. And then Kim sort of joined in on the picture. So basically Kanye West in 2016 released a song called Famous that you might have heard of, that basically was a diss at Taylor, but he kind of made it seem like it was a good thing, that it wasn't a problem. So basically he released a lyric that said, "I think me and Taylor might still have sex, why I made that bitch famous," which you might have, there was a lot of drama around that lyric. Basically it seems Kim and Kanye suggest that Taylor had given permission for that lyric, and later on in 2020 you find out that she actually didn't, and she got cancelled for like 4 years because of it, but she was always telling the truth. So yeah, that was a bit of a 4-year-long saga where Taylor ended up being the one in the right. And then the big one at the moment, so this is Scott Borchetta. He is the one who he's the CEO of Big Machine Records, so that's the company, the record company that Taylor was signed to. And on the right there's Scooter Braun, and basically Scooter has always, like, from Taylor's perspective, always been sort of a bully towards her, has got sort of his clients teaming up against her when the whole Kanye scandal happened, and in the end Scott sold the record label to Scooter, and that meant he owned the rights to Taylor's music. So previously, for the last few years, Taylor's been trying to buy the rights to her own music, but they weren't letting her, even though that's work that she's created, and they let Scooter come in and basically buy the music from her. But where it stands now is he's now sold her music for $300 million, and she's now decided to re-release all of her albums, basically making his masters that he used to own useless. So yeah, she's kind of come off on top on that one, but yeah, that's the key drama that you need to know.
So those kinds of dramas then make reappearances throughout Taylor's lyrics as we move forward from kind of 2020 onwards. The first reference that was made to Scooter Braun and the sale of her masters was in the music video for The Man in 2020. Clearly you can see here this missing poster, If Found, Return to Taylor Swift, which seems to be a reference to the fact that her own masters were missing from her possession. And then this No Scooter sign, which is probably a reference to Scooter Braun himself. Aside from some of the kind of sillier or like small little Easter eggs that she puts in her music videos, there are also some lyrics that quite clearly depict how it impacted her. That includes things such as, and when I still talk to you, I'm screaming at the sky, and when you can't sleep at night, you hear my stolen lullabies, from My Teens Ricochet in 2020. Don't treat me like some situation that needs to be handled. And now he sits on his throne in his palace of bones, praying to his greed. He's got my past, frozen behind glass, but I've got me. Most interestingly, though, from this music video, you can see in the graffiti in the wall just behind is the word karma. And karma is a word that's come up time and time again throughout Taylor Swift's kind of discography, but usually kind of in a more negative way. But in 2022, when she released Midnight, she actually released a whole song called Karma. And she seems to make some really clear references to Scooter Braun in this song. And this was after the real success of her re-released records. So many of the songs and albums she re-released actually then went on to surpass the streaming numbers and sales as the original records themselves, so really making the initial sales that Scooter had made from repurchasing her records redundant. And she seems to celebrate this in the song Karma. First of all, she says, Karma is my boyfriend, Karma is a god. This seems to actually reference potentially Justin Bieber's record Boyfriend and Ariana Grande's record God is a Woman. Both of these are actually clients of Scooter Braun. Also, there's this line, Spider Boy, King of Thieves, where the SB lyric seems to be a reference to Scooter, my pennies made your crown. She also, in the same album, goes on to talk in this line, Mad Woman, which seems to reference a lot of the things that went on at that time, both Scooter and Kanye, by saying women like hunting witches too, doing your dirtiest work for you. And this seems to be a callback to Kanye and Kim Kardashian. This was released in 2020, just before Kanye and Kim's big divorce. And in her more recent works in 2022, she seems to kind of go back to this lyric where she's saying, doing your dirtiest work for you. So this still seems to be directed at Kanye. And she seems to kind of show that Kanye is the one who's causing the issues here by actually helping Kim in the song Vigilante Shit from Midnights in 2022. So this includes lyrics like, she needed cold hard proof, so I gave her some. She had the envelope, where do you think she got it from? And this was then a picture of Kim Kardashian photographed with an envelope of evidence when she was mid-divorce. There's also lyrics such as, and she looks so pretty driving your Benz, lately she's been dressing for revenge. And Kim Kardashian was awarded Kanye West's Mercedes-Benz, his $500,000 Mercedes-Benz in the divorce. And if you're still not convinced about Taylor Swift's lyrical power, in the same song, seemingly referencing Scooter, she says, the master of spin has a few side flings, good wives always know. This song was also mostly about Scooter Braun, and just after its release in 2020, him and his wife got a divorce. So Taylor's power is really all-knowing.
So as mentioned, Taylor Swift released the album Midnights, which is supposed to be a record kind of calling back to Midnights throughout her life. There's speculation that these are songs she wrote that were kind of vaulted and not released on the original records. And there's also speculation that they're songs that she wrote about her past and reflecting on her past as she's been going through these re-recordings. So one strong example of this is the parallels between the song Red from 2012 and her song Maroon from the 2022 album Midnights. So Maroon is kind of a more mature take on Red, and Maroon also has a double meaning. To be like marooned on an island is to be isolated, and this Taylor will kind of call back to this when she references kind of feeling alone at the end of this relationship. But Red uses primary colors and simple emotions, so losing him was blue, like I'd never known. Missing him was dark gray, all alone, but loving him was red. She views this relationship as strong and passionate, but ending so suddenly. And Maroon examines this relationship as kind of a more toxic relationship. It's literally a darker shade of red, literally and figuratively. She starts by referencing 10 different shades of red in this song, which ironically is on her 10th studio album and was probably not an accident if you know anything about Taylor Swift. So she starts with burgundy. She says, "You splashed your wine into me, not spilled your wine." That might come back. Blood rushed into my cheeks, so scarlet. The mark they saw on my collarbone, the rust that grew between telephones. And now this becomes interesting because those first 3 lyrics could be kind of affectionate, right? And then we're starting to see, oh, there's a problem in this relationship, right? They're not speaking. The lips I used to call home, so scarlet. Carnations you thought were roses, that's us. This is kind of giving miscommunication vibes, right? And then sobbing with your head in your hands, ain't that way shit always ends. So this is the first like real indication we get this is not a healthy relationship. There's something dark going on here. That's not good. And then in the bridge, she goes on to say, "I wake with your memory over me. That's a real fucking legacy to leave." And so we can kind of have 2 interpretations of this, right? I wake with your memory over me. That's a real fucking legacy to leave, like to walk away from. Like they've walked away from the relationship. It's over. Or has this person left a legacy on her? There's supposed to be a comma there. There's no comma. It's below. So I don't know what happened there. Anyway, a comma in the middle of the phrase changes the meaning. Carrying on. So then we're going to look at this parallel between Red and Maroon, where in Red she says, loving him is trying to change your mind once you're already flying through the free fall. So she's saying really like something's happening to her. Like she's experiencing this free fall. She's out of control. And then in Maroon, she says, I choose you, the one I'm dancing with. So she's really kind of taking ownership over this relationship and her role in this relationship now. Then we see this also with the relationship ending. She says, moving on from him is impossible. It's out of her control. And then in Maroon, she says, the rubies I gave up. So she's saying that she gave something up. She took herself out of this relationship. Looked up in the sky, and it was Maroon. And so this is a much darker sky than anything like that we've seen before in her discography. In Invisible String on Folklore in 2020, she paints this really like soft, quiet picture of purple, pink skies. So that one. And so this is a very different motif. We're looking at something that's much more apocalyptic, possibly a bit chaotic, the ending of a relationship, ending in a lot of turmoil. And then another parallel we wanted to bring your attention to is Dear John and Would've Could've Should've off of Midnights. So Would've Could've Should've was released in 2022 and Dear John came out in 2012, so 10 years apart. And Dear John is speculated to be about her relationship with John Mayer. So they dated between 2009 and 2010 when John Mayer was 32 and Taylor Swift was 19. So I'm not going to explain why that's a problem. But I am going to tell you that after this relationship is when Taylor Swift released the song Dear John. And she's never said that it was specifically about John Mayer. Dear John is historically this kind of letter that wives would send to their partners in the army to kind of end a relationship. And she's referred to this song as kind of her letter to why a relationship ended. But John Mayer still goes on to call it cheap songwriting after it's released and says he was absolutely humiliated. And then the then 39-year-old, still apparently petty, on her birthday says December 13th is apparently the lamest day of the year in 2016. But he subsequently deleted this tweet after backlash because everyone was like, you're an asshole. So then, maybe not probably accidentally, Taylor Swift released Would've Could've Should've when she was 32 years old.
And considering the backlash or how John felt about the release of Dear John, you can probably imagine how he probably felt when Should've, Would've, Could've was then released in 2022. So Should've, Would've, Could've is actually a really good kind of lens on Taylor Swift's maturing perspectives and how she uses Midnights to look back at situations that she's already written about lyrically from a very different angle. So some of the most poignant examples of her lyrical changes between Dear John and Would've, Should've, Could've involve this change from I should have known to you should have known. So she kind of repeats in Dear John that it was maybe her who should have known better in this relationship, whereas when she's older and she's looking back, she uses that same lyric but says really you should have known better. There's also lyrics such as don't you think 19's too young to be played by your dark twisted games? And the words don't you think is quite soft. It's kind of saying like, is this something you've maybe considered? Whereas in Would've, Could've, Should've, she's saying, if you'd never looked my way, I'm damn sure I never would have danced for the devil. So in this way, she's saying it's much clearer in her eyes at this age that that's something that she never would have done if he hadn't pursued her. Then there's a lyric such as, well, maybe it's me and my blind optimism to blame. So she was often blamed or kind of, made to be the scapegoat of a lot of relationships when she was young in her career. But in 2022, she uses this phrase, which is kind of a spin on the classic promising young man, which is often used to excuse young men in their bad behavior, and says promising grown man, saying that he should have known better at the time, but also maybe the perspective now isn't that she was the one to blame, but actually in 2022 he is often the one who's kind of at the other end of this backlash now. He's the one who looks bad coming out of this relationship. She also uses the lyrics, so don't look now, I'm shining like fireworks over you a sad empty town, which is kind of her coming out of the relationship initially, and kind of showing that she's moved on and she's much happier for it. But in Should've, Would've, Could've, interestingly, she then goes back to say that now that she's grown, she's scared of the ghosts and memories feel like weapons. So actually, even though this was something that she thought she could quickly move on from, actually the impacts of having this relationship have stayed with her deep into the future. And finally, I'll look back and regret how I ignored when they said run as fast as you can. She's kind of looking into the future and saying that that's something that might happen or that she is going to do. And she seems to then answer that and do so in Would've, Could've, Should've by saying, give me back my girlhood, it was mine first. Saying that she does seem to regret that that was a part of her life that she had to give up to John at the time. All right. So,
are you ready?
Yes. So just in case you still weren't convinced by her lyrical genius, we want to do a little quick quiz with you, which we're going to call, is it Shakespeare or is it Taylor Swift?
So we need a volunteer. We've selected Ellie. If anyone else wants to volunteer and spare Ellie of the trauma, you're welcome to do it.
No takers.
Someone who doesn't know Taylor. Great, you might be on the hot seat.
Yeah,
Thank you. So the point of the game is not if you know the lyrics or you know the quote from play, don't participate. That's not the game. That's no fun. That's called experimenter bias. You should know about it. Anyway, so you guys are gonna shout out what you think it is, and Ellie's gonna funnel the answer to us, and then we'll tell you if you're right or wrong.
All right. So our first one is, whether weather be the frost or the violence of the dog days. Is that a quote from Taylor Swift or a quote from Shakespeare? Just shout out what you think, and then you can, Ellie, if you want to choose what you think.
Ellie will give the
overwhelming.
final answer.
Okay.
Locked in.
Shout out now.
Taylor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Taylor.
Tell Ellie though. You're talking to Ellie.
Taylor. Taylor.
Taylor.
Taylor.
It is Taylor Swift.
Smashed it.
All right, next one. And I'll stay, forgetting any other home but this.
Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shakespeare.
Okay, you and I are past our dancing days.
Really?
Fucking Taylor.
What? Taylor?
Final answer.
Taylor.
That is Shakespeare.
All right, all these people think love's the show, but I would die for you in secret.
Taylor.
Good job. You guys are getting it.
Where the spirit meets the bone in the faith forgotten land.
Fuck it, Shakespeare.
I think so.
That's Taylor Swift.
Shakespeare.
Taylor Swift.
Oh, that's Taylor.
Oh.
Yeah. Cowards die many times before they're dead.
Shakespeare.
If you don't play, don't say it. It's not the game.
This is Shakespeare.
Yeah. Okay.
Alright. Is love a tender thing? Is it too rough, too rude?
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
That is Shakespeare.
Hell was the journey, but it brought me heaven.
Taylor.
Taylor.
This is the very ecstasy of love.
Shakespeare.
Reckon? Shakespeare.
Taylor.
This is Shakespeare.
Finally.
Long were my nights when my days once revolved around you.
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
That's Taylor Swift.
No way. It's so hard.
I made you my temple, my mural, my sky.
Taylor.
Taylor.
Correct.
Sad hours seem long.
Shakespeare.
Yeah. Shakespeare.
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 Walls of insecurity, shifting eyes and vacancy vanished when I saw your face.
Taylor.
That is Taylor Swift.
You're a wicked villain despite of all grace.
Shakespeare.
Taylor.
Taylor.
That is William Shakespeare.
Who has zero grammar? Is it romantic how all my elegies eulogize me?
Oh, fuck no, I'm gonna do it. Shakespeare.
Yeah, Shakespeare. There's no way elegies is in
Taylor.
Yes, that is Taylor.
What? Elegies.
Who coaxed you into paradise and left you there?
I have no idea.
That's Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
Tempt you, but like.
Did the twin flame bruise paint you blue?
Oh, there's a colour blue. That's Taylor. Just
You're catching on.
The Chronicle of Wasted Time.
Shakespeare.
I don't know. Taylor.
That's Taylor.
Shakespeare. I wounded the good and I trusted the wicked.
That's Taylor.
Taylor.
That is Taylor.
Funny Hitler story.
There's not too many left.
Yeah. Almost done. You guys are doing great.
Love is a fragile little flame, it could burn out.
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
There's a lot of confidence in that.
Chains around my demons and wolves brave the season.
Taylor. Rhymes to
Taylor.
It's a very uncomfortable scarf. I was right.
Right.
When I was at home, I was in a better place.
Taylor.
Taylor.
That is William
Fucking
Shakespeare.
You'll always find your way back home.
I think that's fine for Taylor.
No Shakespeare.
Taylor Swift.
That is Taylor Allison Swift. You might have thought it was Hannah Montana, but it's written by Taylor Swift.
Shakespeare.
That one?
Yeah.
That's Taylor.
No, that's Taylor. It's a Hannah Montana song.
So it's either.
No, but she wrote it for
Yeah.
Alright,
Right,
the very
last
last
one.
one. The very last one.
Okay.
Falling feels like flying until the bone crush.
Taylor.
Taylor. It's Shakespeare.
Taylor.
That's it.
That is Taylor Swift.
Alright. Well,
Right.
thank you. That concludes our.
Thank you.